Kept when survival becomes your testimony. Welcome to Soft Girl Era, the sacred space where strong Black women unlearn survival, rediscover softness, and reclaim the joy, rest, and freedom they deserve. I'm your host, LeAnne Dolce, pronounced Dolce, like sweet softness whispered in French. I'm your guide from burnout to boundaries, from doing to being, from strong to soft, and loving every second of it. Today, I had the profound honor of sitting down with LaNora Richard, a woman whose faith has been pressure tested in ways most of us can only imagine. Lenore is not just saying God is keeping her, she has receipts. Her work centers on helping women see that survival is not random, that being kept doesn't mean being untouched, and that if you're still here, you're still on purpose. Her voice is calm, grounded, and deeply necessary in a world that tells us to keep moving without ever stopping to ask how we're really doing. Lenore is making the world a better place by giving women permission to honor their scars while stepping into their calling. And today we're unpacking the wisdom she shared with me. Let's start here. Being kept doesn't mean being untouched. I need you to sit with that for a second because somewhere along the way we started believing that if God's hand is on our life, we shouldn't have trauma. We shouldn't have grief. We shouldn't have hard seasons that leave us limping. But that's not how being kept works. Being kept means those things don't get the final say about who you are or where you're going. It means you walk through the fire, and yes, you smell like smoke, but you didn't burn up. You're still here. And that's not luck, that's divine protection. Lenore reminded me during our conversation that God's presence doesn't erase pain, it sustains you through it. And I think that's the part we don't talk about enough. We want the testimony without the test. We want the breakthrough without the breaking. But the truth is, some of the most anointed, most powerful, most necessary people you know have been through absolute hell. And they came out holding on to something they can't even explain. That's being kept. Let me tell you about Michelle Williams. You know her from Destiny's Child, the Grammy Awards, the stages, the lights, the success. But what you might not know is that while she was touring the world, performing in front of thousands, she was also battling undiagnosed depression. From her teens into global stardom, Michelle wrestled with suicidal thoughts, feelings of worthlessness, and deep shame because she was successful and still struggling. She felt pressure as a Christian and a public figure to appear strong and blessed. And that pressure made it hard to seek help. She grew up in the Black church, gifted and called in music from a young age. Depression began in adolescence, but was misread as sadness or spiritual weakness. Even while touring the world with Destiny's Child, she felt empty and deeply low, leading her to question her worth and even her will to live. But here's what Michelle did: she checked in with herself, with God, with others. That became her three-part framework for healing. She sought therapy and treatment while holding on to her faith instead of hiding behind it. She chose to tell the truth publicly about her mental health, breaking stigma for Black women in the church and in entertainment. And in her book, Checking In, she testified that God didn't abandon her in depression. Instead, He sustained her through it and guided her toward help. She published a book that became a tool for others navigating depression and faith. She became a vocal advocate for mental health awareness, especially in Black and faith communities. She transformed her most vulnerable struggle into a ministry of transparency and mental wellness rooted in faith. Michelle's story shows us that you can be highly visible, deeply anointed, and still walk through darkness and yet be kept, preserved, and used by God. She helped normalize conversations about therapy and mental illness in Black Christian spaces. She gave language and permission for Black women professionals and leaders to say, I'm not okay, but I'm still here, and God is still keeping me. Being kept doesn't mean being untouched, it means being held. Now, let's talk about what happened to you not being your identity, the abuse, the accident, the betrayal, the moment you almost didn't make it, none of that gets to name you. When God keeps you, you are more than what tried to break you. And I know that's easier said than believed because some of us have been carrying those moments like name tags. We introduce ourselves by our trauma, we lead with our wounds. And listen, I'm not saying your story doesn't matter. I'm saying your story is not the whole story. Viola Davis grew up in deep poverty in Rhode Island, in a home marked by domestic violence, instability, and hunger. She faced bullying, racism, and humiliation at school. Her childhood included running from bullies, surviving hunger, and witnessing violence between her parents. She carried the smell, the memories, and the stigma of poverty into classrooms and spaces where she was made to feel small. That trauma could have easily led to hopelessness, numbness, or self destruction. But Viola discovered acting as a lifeline, a place to bring her pain, not pretend it didn't exist. She held on to a deep sense that her life had meaning beyond what she was living through. She did the internal work of naming her trauma, confronting shame, and integrating her story instead of running from it. Today, Viola Davis is an EGOT winning actress and producer. She became the first Black woman to win the Triple Crown of Acting, an Oscar, an Emmy, and a Tony, and later an EGOT. She uses her platform to advocate for Black women, survivors, and underrepresented stories. She publicly refused to sanitize her past, honoring the fact that surviving it is part of her power. In her memoir, Finding Me, she chose to see that little girl not as evidence of God's absence, but as proof that something, someone, kept her alive through impossible odds. She produced and starred in projects centering complex Black women protagonists. She reframed her past not as a stain, but as a sacred part of her calling. Viola gave Black women permission to tell the unpolished truth about our upbringings without apology. She modeled what it looks like when trauma doesn't get to define your future, but it does deepen your empathy and your purpose. Viola's journey mirrors what LaNora shared with me. She did not come out of her story untouched, but she did come out of it alive, standing and clearly preserved for a purpose larger than her pain. What happened to her does not get to define her future, but it does deepen her empathy and her purpose. And here's the third truth LaNora left me with: if you're still here, you're still on purpose. Survival is not random or lucky. The fact that you're still standing, maybe limping, maybe shaking, but standing, is evidence that God is not finished writing your story. And I know some of you are tired. I know some of you feel like you've been through too much to still be expected to show up. But your presence is not an accident. Your breath is not a coincidence. If you're still here, there's still something God wants to do in you, through you, and for you. Sarah Jakes Roberts became pregnant at 13 as the daughter of Bishop T.D. Jakes. Her story, documented in her book Lost and Found, is one of public shame, quiet survival, and a very visible redemption that she attributes to God's relentless protection and grace. She was pregnant at 13 in a high profile Christian family under intense public scrutiny and judgment. She grew up in the spotlight as a preacher's kid, expected to embody perfection. Early pregnancy brought deep humiliation and a sense of isolation, even in spiritual spaces. She struggled with feelings of failure, unworthiness, and distance from God. Later, she went through divorce and seasons of internal chaos while trying to parent and find herself. For years, she wrestled with self sabotage, relationships, and self worth before yielding fully to God's process in her life. But Sarah chose to be radically honest about her story instead of hiding it in shame. As she returned to God, not as a performance, but as a deeply personal surrender. She allowed God to reshape her identity, not as the girl who messed up, but as a woman called to serve other wounded women. Today, Sarah is co pastor of One LA and the Potter's House at One LA, leading thousands. She launched conferences like Woman Evolve that empower women to move beyond their past. She testifies consistently that God did not cause her pain, but he kept her, held her, and repurposed her story. She became a best selling author, sought after speaker, and pastor. She created a global movement for women healing from failure, trauma, and complex pasts. She turned what was supposed to disqualify her into the very testimony that opens doors for others. Sarah gave women, especially Black women in the church, language for being both broken and chosen at the same time. She demonstrated that survival is not random and that God's protection can be seen clearly when you look back over what should have taken you out. Sarah's story embodies the core message LaNora shared with me. What tried to break her didn't get permission to define her, and the fact that she is still standing and leading is evidence that she has been kept on purpose. If you're still here, you're still on purpose. So, what do we do with all of this? How do we take these truths and let them shift the way we see ourselves, our stories, and our survival? LaNora gave me a simple but powerful practice. Take one quiet moment today to check your pulse spiritually and emotionally and say out loud, if I'm still here, God is still keeping me. Then do three things. Name one thing that almost took you out, a memory, a season, a decision. Write down one way you can honor the fact that you survived it. That might mean booking a therapy session, journaling your story, calling a friend, or returning to prayer. And then ask God directly, show me how you've been keeping me even when I couldn't see it. Turn survival into a conscious partnership with God, not just something you passively live through. Because here's the thing. You didn't make it this far by accident. You didn't survive that thing by luck. You didn't come out of that season by chance. You were kept. And being kept means you're still here for a reason. Now I want you to feel something. I want you to feel the weight of what it means to still be standing. Not because you had it easy, not because you avoided pain, but because someone would not let you go. You are not a survivor by coincidence. You are not here by default. You are here because there is still purpose pulsing through your veins. There is still calling coded into your DNA. There is still a story being written, and the pen has not been put down. So here's my challenge to you today. Stop treating your survival like it's ordinary. Stop downplaying the fact that you made it through. Stop minimizing the miracle of your presence. I want you to go home today and I want you to look in the mirror and I want you to say it out loud. I am still here. I was kept and I'm going to live like it. Not recklessly, not carelessly, but intentionally, purposefully, powerfully. I want you to honor the fact that you survived by refusing to waste the life you were given. I want you to honor the fact that you were kept by protecting your peace, setting your boundaries, and choosing softness over survival mode. And I want you to remember this: being kept doesn't mean you won't have scars. It means your scars don't get to write the ending. God does. What happened to you is not your identity, it's your testimony. And if you're still here, you're still on purpose. So take a breath, a deep one, and say it with me. If I'm still here, God is still keeping me. Say it until you believe it. Say it until it shifts something inside you. Say it until you stop seeing survival as something you barely made it through and start seeing it as something sacred, something intentional, something divine. You are not here by accident. You are here because God is keeping you. And that is everything.